Good morning, my dear friends. It's finally March and I think spring has come. March, I have the impression that this year it was the most anticipated month. We're heading to the garden and I welcome you to the episode, What to Do in the Garden in March. My dear friends, every year we have a situation where we actually record similar episodes because we record episodes like March in the Garden. And it might seem that these episodes are basically about the same thing. But as this year's winter still shows, these episodes have to be different because they need to be adjusted to the specific season, and that's how it is this year. Today I'm going to tell you about the work I did at the beginning of February last year, and this year, of course, there was no such possibility. That's why it's worth watching these episodes that preview a given month in a specific year, because it shows exactly what we can do at that time. And that's why I encourage you to subscribe to the channel, because then you'll be the first. You'll immediately know that there's a new episode, and you can see what that Hubert Lemansky will be talking about in the latest episode. So I encourage you, and of course I also encourage you to share this episode of ours somewhere. And here I am, standing with a pitchfork, waiting to start this gardening season in March and tell you what I'm going to do. My dear friends, it's widely known that the most important task at the beginning of the season in the garden, and usually it was in February, but this year's February was just the way it was. Well, that's pruning. Basically pruning everything you can, whatever you didn't cut in the fall and what needs to be trimmed in the spring. So especially those plants that are either perennials and sprout again, or shrubs that don't bloom in early spring. Remember, we don't prune those plants that bloom in early spring, like forsythia, for example. We don't cut them, but there are plenty of other ones that we do prune. Hydrangeas especially deserve attention here, which I talked about in the previous one. If you want to see it, you have the link here, but it's not just hydrangeas. Because the winter was very long, we can still prune, for example, buddleias, we can already prune. We can still prune shrubs and trees that are so-called weeping shrubs. I think they haven't started to release sap yet, so we can prune wisteria, and I'll tell you about wisteria in the next episode, and about buddleias. But we also have flower beds. We're starting to clean up the beds, so it's very important that we simply cut out what's left. Later we'll do more cleaning, but for now, of course, all kinds of herbs and leftovers just to start cleaning up. Because the next stage is already filling up the flower bed, for example, with some compost, so I'm getting to work and cutting. I'm starting with my so-called Italian flower bed, which is the sunniest bed, because here everything starts growing the earliest. And that's also a tip for you. If you have a garden with varying amounts of sunlight, start with the spot that gets the most sun and is the warmest. The flower beds, because that's where new plants will appear first, and we wouldn't want to accidentally step on them. I can already see that there are plenty of bulb plants here that are starting to sprout. So I need to cut this quickly and then move on to the next task, which we'll actually be doing every day in March. My dear friends, once you finish cutting everything, and I have a feeling it will take a long time, because this year it will all happen in a short period. You have to do everything, which means cleaning up, that is, raking out from the flower beds whatever is unnecessary. Unless you use the method where you leave everything and let the plants take care of themselves, but many of you still do a bit of cleaning up. So the next element of this whole March puzzle is raking, basically raking everything. We start with the flower beds, because that's where things were cut and pulled out, so we rake there. I do that first. Well, yes, initially with metal rakes, which are great for pulling leaves and plant remnants out of nooks and crannies. Then I use bigger, fan-shaped plastic rakes to gather more, and finally some small hand rakes. Why? Because once we've pulled everything out here, and if we had plants that self-seed, that's where new seedlings appear under those leaves. And then we can see how many we have and whether we have enough to possibly transplant them somewhere else. We'll be doing that in a moment, but we can already observe and make sure there are places where they can grow freely. Another thing in March, actually some of it could have been done in February, but February was what it was. This is definitely something that keeps many garden owners in Poland up at night, because the lawn is basically in every garden. And it's March, that's the right time, when the temperature is already rising above those 5 degrees, to start working on the lawn. First you can do liming, which actually could have been done earlier. Then we can do scarification, aeration, and we can overseed the lawn. But that's much later, towards the end of March or even at the beginning of April. And most importantly, at the very beginning, we need to walk around and see what happened to our lawn after the winter. Especially after a winter like this one, with a lot of snow and snow that stayed for a long time, because different things could have happened under that snow. Rotten patches like that. We need to check how much thatch the grass has, and first of all, of course, we need to rake everything off the lawn and start working. I'll show you another episode in March when we'll be taking care of a piece of the lawn, because I want to do it thoroughly. And for those who follow me and know what my garden looks like, this is the view from the back. Well, this is one of the last views with this lawn, because this lawn is about to be cut, as they say. There will be changes, which I already mentioned last season. New flower beds will appear behind me, and we can also start thinking about that in March, about these new arrangements in our garden. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for you to come up with some new spots, because it's always such great energy in the spring when these new places appear in the garden. March, my dear friends, is also Women's Day, and Women's Day means one thing to me. I sow tomatoes. And I also asked you about this recently on Instagram and YouTube. Have you already done your sowing? Are you waiting? Or maybe you're waiting until the end of March? Or maybe you're not waiting at all and just buying ready-made ones? Most of you said that you wait until mid-March. For me, it's around Women's Day. That's when I sow the first tomatoes, and the first seedlings also appear, including in the greenhouse. So March is actually, as you can see, a very intense time after we've already sown some things in February. Look, sweet peas, for example. Look for example at the first radish already. So March is already in full swing, and there will also be a lot of different options. And there were already a lot of options in previous years. For decorations, the first decorations, those spring ones, already for the terrace, so ideas are already coming to mind about how it will look this year. Because it's so specific, and February with January probably lasted 90 days in my mind, so nothing was done in the vegetable garden, and that vegetable garden is absolutely waiting for me to start working there. The last thing, maybe not the last because there are many, but from those I'll be talking about in this episode. The last one, but just as important, is of course signing up for the WOW Garden Project. Listen, there's a new edition this year, and we want to show new gardens, new emotions, and new heroes. So don't wait, just look for photos you have of your own gardens, or go to your neighbor, friend, or family member who has a beautiful garden and tell them about the WOW Garden Project. Because I want to travel across Poland again and show your gardens, your emotions, so that more people can see them. And don't be afraid, because I know that many of you write to me, Hubert, I would apply, but all those gardens were so beautiful that mine really isn't good enough. I promise that we will show your garden in such a way that you will be surprised yourself at how beautiful it is, because all these gardens are beautiful, you just have to show them in the right way. But in reality, the most important thing is you, the ones who work in this garden, so go to the photo gallery, listen, the application, how to do it, you have the link in the description of this video. I encourage you, and in a moment I invite you to the next episode, because we're starting a super pruning with super plants.